I never thought I'd see the day when a glass of wine would be the least shocking thing that happened to me at dinner. Chloe Adams, 7 months pregnant, sat nervously at a luxurious restaurant table, waiting for her husband, Alexander Davis. The soft buzz of conversation around her did little to calm her nerves. Her pregnancy had been difficult, and today, she had hoped for a peaceful evening. But that was before Sophie Collins walked in. Sophie, Alexander's mistress, was not the type of woman who waited quietly in the wings. Her presence was electric, and tonight, she was here to make Chloe's world fall apart. Chloe had long suspected something was off between her and Alexander, but seeing Sophie in person, looking flawless in a designer dress, made everything feel real in a way that hurt. Chloe's hand gently rested on her growing belly, her unborn baby moving within her as if to remind her that she had more to protect than just her marriage. Alexander was late, as usual. But it wasn't his absence that made Chloe uneasy, it was the cold, calculating way Sophie walked toward her table. Sophie's eyes locked with Chloe's as she slid into the seat across from her, a sly smile curling her lips. "I'm surprised you're still here, Chloe. I figured you'd run away by now. After all, you know your place, don't you?" Chloe swallowed hard, trying to keep her voice steady. "This isn't your place, Sophie. It never was." Sophie laughed, a sound that felt more like a challenge than a joke. "Oh, I think it is now. Alexander and I have been closer than you think." Chloe's heart sank, but she refused to let Sophie see how much her words stung. She couldn't. Not now. Not in front of her. As Chloe opened her mouth to respond, the waiter appeared, and for a moment, the tension in the air was broken. But only for a moment. The minute Sophie reached for her glass of wine, everything shifted. Without warning, Sophie tossed the entire drink across the table, splashing the expensive red liquid all over Chloe's dress. The shock of the cold, wet wine made Chloe freeze. Her mind raced, but her body refused to move. "How dare you!" Chloe's voice broke the silence. Sophie's eyes narrowed, her lips curling into a smug grin. "What? You can't handle a little splash of wine?" she taunted, leaning back in her chair. Chloe's breath caught as she realized this wasn't just about the wine. Sophie wasn't just trying to humiliate her, this was about power. Alexander had never truly cared for her, not in the way she had once believed. But Chloe wasn't about to let Sophie walk all over her. Not now. Not ever. She stood up, wiping the wine from her lap, her mind racing with a plan. She needed to be smart about this. She needed to show Sophie that this was far from over. "You'll regret this, Sophie," Chloe said, her voice calm but deadly. Sophie looked up at her with a smirk, clearly thinking she had won. But what Sophie didn't know was that Chloe's father was watching this scene unfold from across the room. And he wasn't just any man, he was the owner of the restaurant. Chloe had never planned to involve her father in her personal life, but Sophie had made a huge mistake. This wasn't just about Alexander anymore. This was about family, dignity, and the kind of power that Sophie could never understand. Chloe knew that her father's involvement would turn the tables in ways Sophie could never predict. "You're going to pay for this," Chloe muttered under her breath, her gaze never leaving Sophie's. It was time to turn the tables. Chloe had no idea just how much her life was about to change, but one thing was certain. Sophie was about to learn that you never underestimate a woman who has nothing left to lose. Chloe stood there for a moment, the wine still dripping from her dress, her chest rising and falling with each breath. She could feel the eyes of the entire restaurant on her, but she refused to let them see her weakness. Sophie's laughter echoed in her ears, but Chloe's mind was already spinning 1,000 miles a minute. She wasn't about to let this woman get the better of her. She wasn't about to let Sophie humiliate her any longer. As Chloe stood up straight, a plan began to form in her mind. She wasn't just going to let this go. Sophie had no idea who she was messing with. Chloe wasn't just the pregnant wife of a millionaire. She was someone who had the strength to turn the tables, even when the odds were stacked against her. Her father had taught her that. Chloe slowly made her way toward the front of the restaurant, her eyes focused on the exit. She had to find her father. He was here somewhere, and once he knew what was going on, everything would change. The thought of Sophie standing there, so smug and confident, pushed Chloe's steps forward. She would not let Sophie think she had won. Chloe's hand rested on her stomach again, feeling the reassuring flutter of her baby. The baby who was going to make this all worth it. She needed to get Sophie to back off, but more than that, she needed to show Alexander and Sophie just how powerful she could be. Chloe spotted her father near the entrance, talking to a few business associates. He was the owner of this restaurant, and he wasn't someone anyone wanted to cross. She knew he'd never let anyone disrespect her like this. As she approached, her father turned and saw the state she was in. His face shifted from friendly to concerned in an instant. "Chloe, what happened?" he asked, his voice low and steady. Chloe didn't answer immediately. Instead, she motioned towards Sophie, who was still sitting at the table, looking like she had won some kind of victory. Chloe's father's eyes narrowed, and Chloe saw the flash of something dangerous in them. "I'll handle this," he said, his voice cold with authority. He turned and walked towards Sophie's table without another word, leaving Chloe standing there, feeling a mixture of relief and anticipation. This wasn't just about the wine. This wasn't just about Sophie's cruel words. This was about taking control back. Chloe's father had a way of making things right, and Sophie had no idea what was coming. As her father reached the table, Sophie looked up at him, her smile faltering just a little. "Mr. Adams, what a surprise," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. But Chloe could tell that Sophie was nervous now. She hadn't expected this. Chloe's father didn't waste any time. "You've made a serious mistake, Sophie," he said, his voice calm but firm. "You've insulted my daughter in my restaurant, and that's something I won't tolerate." Sophie's face went pale, but she quickly recovered, trying to play it off. "I was just having a little fun," she said, trying to sound nonchalant. But Chloe could hear the nervousness in her voice. "Fun?" Chloe's father repeated, his tone low and threatening. "You've crossed the line, and now you'll have to face the consequences." The restaurant had gone silent, and Chloe could feel the weight of the moment. This was it. This was her chance to finally put an end to Sophie's games. Chloe's father wasn't just going to let her get away with this. Sophie's expression flickered from annoyance to fear as she realized that Chloe's father wasn't someone she could manipulate. Chloe stood behind her father, watching as he took charge of the situation. This wasn't just about her. This was about showing Sophie, and Alexander, that Chloe Adams wasn't someone to mess with. She wasn't just the pregnant wife anymore. She was a force to be reckoned with. As Chloe's father made his final statement to Sophie, she could see the realization hit Sophie like a ton of bricks. She wasn't in control anymore. Chloe was. And from that moment on, Sophie would know that no one, not even the most powerful people in the room, could take Chloe down. She had fought for her dignity, her family, and now she was going to win. Chloe's father turned back to her with a look of approval in his eyes. "You okay, sweetheart?" he asked, his voice softening. Chloe nodded, a smile tugging at her lips. "I am now," she said, feeling the weight lift off her shoulders. Sophie's game was over. Chloe stood in the background, watching her father handle the situation with Sophie, her heart racing but her mind clear. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she was in control. Her father's presence was a shield, one that she hadn't realized she needed until now. The way Sophie's demeanor shifted from confident to defensive was almost satisfying. It wasn't just the wine or the humiliation. It was the fact that Chloe had been living under the shadow of her husband's indifference for far too long, and today, things were about to change. Alexander had no idea what was coming. He had no idea what his actions had truly cost him. Chloe's father, Edward Adams, wasn't the kind of man who made idle threats. He meant every word he said. And Sophie knew it. As the tension in the restaurant simmered down, Chloe felt a surge of empowerment. Sophie's haughty smile faded as she realized she was no longer the one holding the cards. Chloe's father turned to her, his face softened with concern. You sure you're okay, sweetheart? He asked, his voice warm yet firm. Chloe nodded, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. I'm fine now, she replied, her voice steady, more confident than it had been in weeks. She knew that this moment wasn't just about Sophie. It was about reclaiming her life, about standing up for herself and her child. As her father dismissed Sophie and walked her out of the restaurant, Chloe took a deep breath and glanced at the empty chair across from her. It was time to face Alexander. She could feel his presence before she even turned to look. He had finally arrived, but he was too late. The damage had already been done, but it wasn't just Sophie who had made mistakes. Alexander had failed her long before Sophie had even entered the picture. Chloe watched as he walked toward her, his face a mix of frustration and confusion. Chloe, what's going on? He asked, his voice cold, distant, as always. He was used to being in control, used to having the final word. But not today. Today, Chloe was in charge. You're late, Chloe said, her voice surprisingly calm. And I'm done letting you control this. I'm done letting you think you can walk all over me. Alexander blinked, clearly taken aback. What are you talking about? He asked, trying to regain his composure. Sophie. Chloe interrupted him, her tone sharp, like a knife cutting through the air. Sophie doesn't get to ruin my life anymore. And neither do you. Alexander's expression faltered. What do you mean by that? He asked, his voice tinged with impatience. Chloe stood up, the weight of her decision heavy but resolute. I mean that I'm done being the perfect wife you want me to be. I'm done being the silent one. I'm taking control of my life, Alexander. And you. She paused, letting her words sink in. You can either get on board or stay out of my way. His face hardened, but Chloe could see the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. He wasn't used to her talking like this. He wasn't used to her standing up for herself. And that, Chloe realized, was the power she had all along. As she turned to leave the restaurant, her mind raced with the realization that this was just the beginning. She didn't need Alexander or Sophie to define her anymore. She had her own strength, and it was time to show the world just what she was capable of. Her father had shown her that family could be the greatest weapon, but now she knew she was her own greatest ally. Chloe didn't know exactly what the future held, but one thing was clear, she wasn't going to let anyone control her anymore. Chloe stood outside the restaurant, her mind racing with the events that had just unfolded. She felt a strange mix of emotions, relief, empowerment, and something deeper, something she hadn't felt in a long time, control. She wasn't the woman who had spent years swallowing her feelings, putting up with her husband's indifference and disrespect. No, today she had taken a stand, and it felt like a new chapter was beginning. Her father had been her rock, but now, Chloe knew she was strong enough to stand on her own. As she walked toward her car, her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a text from her best friend, Rachel. How did it go? You okay? Chloe smiled, typing back a quick reply. Better than okay. I'm done being quiet. She hit send, her fingers trembling slightly with excitement. But just as she was about to slip her phone back into her bag, she felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned around, expecting to see a waiter or someone she recognized, but instead, it was Alexander. His face was serious, his jaw clenched as if he was fighting for control of his emotions. Chloe, he began, his voice softer than it had been in the restaurant, but still carrying a hint of impatience. Can we talk? Please? Chloe crossed her arms over her chest, taking a deep breath. This was it. The moment she'd been waiting for, the moment she had prepared herself for. There's nothing to talk about, Alexander, she said calmly, her voice steady and clear. Not unless you've suddenly decided to respect me, to respect this marriage, but I don't think that's going to happen. Alexander's expression shifted, a mix of frustration and confusion crossing his features. What are you talking about? I'm trying to fix this, Chloe. I want to make things right. Chloe shook her head, feeling a mix of anger and disappointment. No, Alexander. You don't get to fix this. You've had years to fix things, and you chose Sophie instead. You chose her over me, over our family. She paused, letting her words hang in the air. And now, it's too late. I'm done. Alexander took a step forward, his hand reaching out as if to touch her, but Chloe stepped back, holding her ground. Don't, she said, her voice firm but quiet. You've hurt me more than I can explain. But I'm stronger now, and I'm done being your backup plan, done being the second choice. His eyes softened, and for a moment Chloe almost thought she saw regret flicker in his gaze. But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. I've already made up my mind, Alexander, Chloe continued, her voice more resolute now. I'm taking control of my life. And I don't need you to tell me I'm making a mistake. This is the only choice I have left. Alexander stared at her, clearly struggling to understand. So what now? He asked quietly. Chloe took a deep breath, finally feeling the weight of everything she'd been holding inside her. Now I live for myself. For my child. And for the future that I'm going to build. Without you. She turned to leave, her heart pounding in her chest. It wasn't the end of everything, she reminded herself. It was the beginning. She had taken back her power, and now nothing would stop her. As she walked away from Alexander, she knew there was no turning back. She had made the hardest decision of her life, but it was the right one. And she was ready for whatever came next. Chloe didn't look back as she walked away from Alexander. Every step she took felt like a weight lifting off her shoulders, and with each step, the world seemed to shift. It was strange, almost surreal. For years she had been living in his shadow, waiting for him to give her the attention she craved, but now, she realized something: she had been enough all along. She didn't need his approval, his validation, or his love. She had herself, and that was all that mattered. As she reached her car, she paused for a moment, taking a deep breath. The cool night air felt different now, almost refreshing. It wasn't the same oppressive air of helplessness she had felt earlier. This was freedom, the kind she had been longing for but had never known how to grab hold of. Chloe started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot, her mind already racing ahead. What would she do now? She had no clear plan, but she knew one thing for sure: she wasn't going back to the life she had before. She had to protect her baby, protect herself, and most importantly, she had to find her strength. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, Chloe felt a sense of excitement rather than fear. Her phone buzzed again. It was another text from Rachel. What's next? You seem different. Chloe smiled at the message. Everything is about to change. She typed back, her fingers moving with purpose. I'm taking control, Rachel. This is just the beginning. As she drove, she thought about the conversation with her father earlier. He had always been there for her, offering support without judgment. But today, she realized it wasn't just his strength that had carried her, it was hers too. She was done being a passive participant in her own life. She was done letting others decide her worth. Chloe knew that the coming days wouldn't be easy, but she was ready for them. She would fight for her future, for her child's future, and for her own peace of mind. Alexander's betrayal had hurt her deeply, but it had also shown her something: she was capable of standing up for herself. And that, Chloe decided, was the most important lesson of all. She was no longer just the wife in the background. She was Chloe Adams, and she was ready to take on the world. As she pulled into her driveway, she saw her father's car parked outside, waiting for her. She smiled. He had always been her rock, but tonight, she was the one who was strong. Chloe stepped out of the car, feeling the cool grass beneath her feet, and walked up to the front door. It was time to move forward. No more looking back. Chloe stepped into the house, feeling the warmth of familiarity wrap around her. The house she had once shared with Alexander felt different now, emptier in some ways but freer in others. It was no longer a place of silence and unspoken tension. It was a place where she could finally breathe. Her father was sitting in the living room, his usual calm demeanor giving Chloe the comfort she needed. As she sat down across from him, he gave her a knowing look. "You did well today," he said softly. "I'm proud of you." Chloe smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes for the first time in a long while. "Thanks, Dad," she replied, her voice steady. "I don't think I've ever felt so sure about anything in my life." Her father's eyes softened, and he placed a hand on hers. "You've always been strong, Chloe. You just had to remember that strength." Chloe nodded, feeling a surge of gratitude for him. She had spent so many years trying to find validation from others, especially from Alexander, but now she realized that her strength had always been inside her. "I don't know what comes next," Chloe said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I know I can handle it. For me. For the baby." Her father gave a small, reassuring nod. "One step at a time. But you don't have to do it alone." Chloe's mind drifted back to the conversation she'd had with Alexander earlier. His face, full of confusion and frustration, had been a stark contrast to the clarity she felt now. She had always been the one to keep the peace, to put everyone else's needs first. But today, she had made a choice for herself. She wasn't going to wait for someone to give her the life she deserved. She was going to take it. "Do you think I'm doing the right thing?" she asked, her voice quiet, almost uncertain. Her father smiled, the kind of smile that made Chloe feel invincible. "You've already done the hardest part. You've taken control of your life. That's all anyone can do." Chloe let out a long breath, feeling the weight of the decision settle into place. She wasn't looking for revenge. She wasn't looking to hurt anyone. She was just looking to live her life on her terms. And that was enough. "I know I have a long road ahead," Chloe said, her voice gaining strength. "But I'm ready for it. I have to be." Her father's hand tightened around hers, offering silent support. "You always have been, sweetheart." Chloe stood up, looking around the house once more. This was the last time she would walk through these halls as Alexander's wife. It was time for a new chapter, one that was hers to write. She could already feel the change within her, a quiet but powerful shift that made her believe in the future again. "I'm going to make it," Chloe whispered to herself, a promise she made deep within her soul. She was no longer just the wife in the background. She was Chloe Adams, and nothing could stop her now. Chloe stood by the window, staring out at the night sky, her thoughts swirling. The events of the past few days felt like a whirlwind, and yet, there was a strange sense of calm inside her. The decision she had made, the step she had taken, was irreversible, but it was also the first real choice she had made for herself in years. She had spent so long waiting for Alexander to choose her, to show her love and respect, but now she realized that she had been waiting for something that was never going to come. She was done waiting. The quiet hum of the night was interrupted by a knock at the door. Chloe hesitated for a moment before walking over and opening it. It was her father, standing there with a gentle smile, his presence always reassuring. "How are you holding up?" he asked, his voice steady but warm. Chloe smiled back, feeling a weight lift off her shoulders just by seeing him. "Better," she said softly. "I've never felt more in control." Her father nodded, his eyes filled with pride. "You've always had that strength, Chloe. You just needed to remember it." Chloe took a deep breath, her hand subconsciously resting on her stomach. "I'm scared, Dad. I don't know what's going to happen next." Her father stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "I know you're scared," he said gently. "But you're not alone. You have me, and you have your own strength. That's all you need to face whatever comes your way." Chloe's heart swelled with gratitude. "I don't know if I can do this alone," she admitted. "But I know I can't go back to what it was." Her father placed a hand on her shoulder, squeezing it comfortingly. "You're not alone, Chloe. And you don't have to figure everything out right now. Just take it one step at." New confidence in her steps. She was no longer waiting for something to happen. She was making it happen. As she sipped her coffee, her phone buzzed on the counter. It was a message from Rachel. "I've been thinking about you. How are you really doing?" Chloe smiled to herself. Rachel had always been there for her, always ready to support her, no questions asked. She typed a quick response, her fingers moving with ease. I'm better than I've ever been. Taking control, one step at a time. The reply came almost immediately. I knew you'd get there. You're stronger than you know. Chloe set the phone down, feeling the weight of those words settle in her chest. She had always relied on others for validation, for reassurance that she was doing the right thing. But now, she realized that the only validation she needed was her own. She didn't need Alexander's approval, Sophie's approval, or anyone else's. All she needed was to trust herself. The next few days passed by in a blur of productivity and reflection. Chloe focused on herself, on her health, and on preparing for the future. She made a list of things she wanted to accomplish, goals that she had put off for years. Some were small, like taking a yoga class or spending more time outside. Others were bigger, like starting her own business or finding a way to give back to her community. Each item on the list was a step toward reclaiming her life. It was no longer about what Alexander wanted or what Sophie thought. It was about her, her dreams, and her future. Chloe didn't know exactly what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she felt excited about it. She wasn't just going through the motions anymore. She was living. And that was enough. A week later, Chloe sat in a meeting with her lawyer, discussing the details of her divorce. The process was uncomfortable, but it was necessary. Alexander had made it clear that he wasn't going to let go easily, but Chloe wasn't afraid anymore. She had her father's support, and more importantly, she had her own. She was going to make sure that she was treated fairly, that her rights were respected, and that her future would not be dictated by anyone but herself. As the lawyer went over the paperwork, Chloe sat back in her chair, feeling a sense of calm wash over her. She wasn't alone in this process. She had people who cared about her, people who believed in her, and people who would help her rebuild. She had already taken the first step, and now, there was no turning back. The rest of the meeting passed in a blur of legal jargon, but Chloe didn't mind. She was focused on the bigger picture, the life she was creating for herself and her child. And nothing, no one, was going to take that away from her. When the meeting ended, Chloe walked out of the office with a new sense of purpose. She had taken back control, and she was ready to face whatever came next. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, she felt ready. She wasn't the woman who had spent years waiting for things to change. She was the woman who was making those changes happen. And that felt like the most powerful thing in the world. Chloe stood at the edge of a new beginning, her heart still racing from the changes she had made. Every decision, every step she had taken had led her here. She had no more doubts, no more second-guessing. This was her life now, and she was the one in control. The past had faded into the distance, a memory that no longer defined her. Now, it was about moving forward, and Chloe was ready. As she sat down at her desk, she glanced over at the small framed photo of her and her father on a hiking trip they had taken a few years ago. It was one of those moments that had stuck with her, a reminder of a time when life felt simpler. She had been happy then, but this happiness felt different. It felt earned. Chloe had never imagined herself in a position like this. There was a time when she had felt lost, caught in a marriage that felt more like a burden than a partnership. But now, every day felt like a new opportunity to rediscover who she was. She wasn't just Alexander's wife, she wasn't just a mother. She was Chloe Adams, a woman with dreams, goals, and the power to make them happen. The phone rang, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was Rachel again, checking in. "How's it going?" Rachel's voice was warm, filled with the kind of support that Chloe had come to rely on. "It's going well," Chloe replied, her smile genuine. "I feel like I'm finally finding my way. I'm starting to believe that I can really do this." "Of course you can," Rachel said with conviction. "You've always had it in you. You just needed to see it for yourself." Chloe couldn't help but laugh, a sound that felt more like freedom than anything else. "I think I'm starting to see it now." I've got a plan, Rachel. I'm not just going to sit around waiting for things to happen anymore. I'm going to make them happen. She could almost hear Rachel grinning through the phone. I knew you had it in you. What's the first step? Chloe thought for a moment, her fingers gently tapping the desk as she formulated her thoughts. I'm going to start my own business. I've been thinking about it for a while now, and I'm finally ready to take the plunge. Rachel's excitement was evident. That's amazing, Chloe. What kind of business? Something that feels true to me. I'm passionate about sustainability, about helping people make eco-friendly choices. I've been doing research, and I think I can create something that not only makes a difference but also fills a need in the market. Chloe paused, her mind racing with ideas. I'm not just building a business. I'm building something that will make my life, and my child's life, better. Something that will empower me to create a future I'm proud of. There was silence on the other end of the line, and Chloe knew Rachel was taking it all in. You've got this, Chloe, Rachel finally said. I'm so proud of you. Chloe's heart swelled at her friend's words. Thanks, Rachel. I couldn't have done it without you. As they hung up, Chloe felt a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't alone in this journey. She had the support of the people who cared about her, and she had the strength to see it through. Her mind returned to the business plan she had been drafting, and she felt a spark of excitement. This was just the beginning. She was building something for herself, and this time, it was going to be everything she had ever dreamed of. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow through the windows of her office, Chloe felt more at peace than she had in a long time. She was no longer waiting for her life to unfold. She was creating it, one step at a time. The days passed quickly for Chloe as she dove deeper into the planning of her new business. Each morning felt like a fresh start, full of potential and possibility. She had the freedom to shape her future now, and it felt exhilarating. As her belly grew, so did her confidence. Her days were filled with meetings, research, and brainstorming sessions, all focused on her vision. She wasn't just creating a business, she was creating a life she was proud of. She had never felt more alive. One evening, as Chloe sat at her kitchen table, her laptop open in front of her, the sound of the doorbell echoed through the house. She wasn't expecting anyone, and her first thought was that it was probably a delivery. But when she opened the door, she was surprised to see Alexander standing there. He looked different, less sure of himself than usual. His eyes met hers, and for a moment there was silence. Chloe, he began, his voice almost hesitant. Can we talk? Chloe stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. It had been weeks since they last spoke, and in that time, she had moved forward in ways she never thought possible. She wasn't sure what to make of his sudden appearance. But one thing was clear, she wasn't the same woman who had let him walk all over her for years. What is it, Alexander? She asked, keeping her voice calm, but firm. I don't know where to start, he said, running a hand through his hair. I know I've messed up. I've been thinking a lot about everything, about us, and I want to make things right. Chloe felt a twinge of frustration but pushed it aside. She had heard similar words from him before, empty promises that never amounted to anything. But now, things were different. She wasn't waiting for him to fix anything. She was fixing things for herself. You had your chance, Alexander, she said, her voice steady. And you didn't take it. He seemed to deflate slightly, but he didn't give up. Chloe, I know I've hurt you, and I'm sorry. I know it doesn't mean much now, but I regret how I treated you. I regret everything. Chloe looked at him, her expression hardening. I don't need your apology, she said, the words slipping out before she could stop them. What I need is for you to understand that I'm not that woman anymore. I'm not the woman who will wait around for you to come back and fix things. I'm the one fixing my life now. Alexander opened his mouth to say something, but Chloe held up a hand, stopping him. I'm not interested in going backwards, she continued. I'm moving forward, and I'm doing it for me and for my child. I'm not waiting for you to change. I've already changed. There was a long pause before Alexander spoke again, his voice barely a whisper. I don't want to lose you, Chloe. Chloe's heart wavered for a moment, but she quickly regained her composure. You already did, she said softly. And that's the best thing that ever happened to me. Alexander looked at her, a mixture of regret and confusion in his eyes. Chloe didn't feel the need to explain herself any further. She had said everything that needed to be said. Goodbye, Alexander, she said quietly, before stepping back and closing the door. As she turned around and leaned against it, Chloe let out a long breath. She wasn't angry anymore, not even hurt. She just felt a deep sense of relief, like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. The past was behind her, and she was finally free to live the life she had always dreamed of. She smiled to herself, already thinking about the future. She was ready. Ready for everything that was coming next. Chloe woke up to the soft morning light filtering through the curtains. It had been a few weeks since she had last seen Alexander, and each day felt like a step further into her new life. The past no longer held the same power over her. It was a chapter that had been closed, and now, she was writing a new story. She placed her hand on her growing belly, feeling the flutter of her child inside her. This was what mattered now. Everything else was just noise. She smiled to herself, standing up and stretching as she made her way to the kitchen. Today was another busy day, full of possibilities. Her business was slowly taking shape, and with every email she sent, every decision she made, she felt herself growing stronger, more certain of what she wanted. It wasn't just about the business. It was about her. About reclaiming her sense of self, her independence, and her future. She wasn't defined by her past, by the mistakes of others, or by the expectations people had placed on her. She was Chloe Adams, and she was in charge of her life now. Chloe poured herself a cup of coffee and sat down at the kitchen table, her laptop open in front of her. She had a few meetings scheduled for the day, and she had a long to-do list. There was still so much to do, but she was excited. Her life was no longer a passive one. She was making things happen. A knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. She wasn't expecting anyone, but she stood up, curious. When she opened the door, she was surprised to find her father standing there. He had a warm smile on his face, and his presence always made her feel grounded. "Hi, sweetheart," he said, stepping inside. "I thought I'd come by and see how you're doing." Chloe smiled, a wave of affection for him washing over her. "I'm doing great, Dad," she said, closing the door behind him. "I'm really starting to get the hang of all this." Her father looked around the house, his eyes scanning the space as if taking in the changes Chloe had made. "It's different, but in a good way," he said, his voice full of approval. "I can see that you've really found your footing." Chloe nodded, feeling a deep sense of pride. "I think I have. It's funny, but I feel more like myself than I have in years." Her father sat down across from her at the kitchen table, his expression softening. "I'm proud of you, Chloe. You've come a long way, and you've done it all on your own." Chloe felt her heart swell with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you, Dad," she said quietly. "You've always been there for me, and that means more than you know." Her father smiled, reaching across the table to place a hand on hers. "You've always had it in you, Chloe. You just needed to realize it. And now that you have, there's